Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 127 of Buds and Blue Jays. This is your place for all things related to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Jesse Burrell, joined as always by my co-host, Riley McConnell. And Riley, the Toronto Blue Jays took the day off on Monday, came back home to the Rogers Center to our friendly confines, and played a two-game series with a team that is very close to us in the standings with the Philadelphia Phillies. We ended up splitting the two games 1-1, but a lot of interesting things came out of this series as the Blue Jays gear up for a playoff push down the stretch, Riley. We're going to talk about all that here on our episode, including good things that Yusei Kikuchi has done. Cavan Biggio is on fire out of nowhere. What? And so much more, including Santiago Espinal, Paul DeYoung, prospect notes, and so much more, Riley. But first, make sure you follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. If you are watching us on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are on a push for 500 subscribers, and we want you to be one of the first 500 to join our show. So please make sure we do that. But without further ado, Riley, what's up, man? How are we feeling after the Blue Jays two-game miniseries against Philly?
Well, Jesse, of course, as I mentioned last time, I'm glad to be back. Just got back today. I was in cottage country. Unfortunately, I was a little late to the party getting, the results and stuff as, hey, I needed some well-earned rest and relaxation, no cell phone service. But I guess you could say pleasantly surprised as of the results of the game, and who played a factor in the win for us, and who played a factor in the loss for us. Very surprised in a lot of different ways for our results. Mixed feelings, of course. A lot of days off. Day off, game, and day off today. Obviously, us recording on Thursday before the weekend. Jesse, I mean, hey, the Phillies, if you want to talk about a team that matches us, I would say pretty well, it's the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, good team.
And they threw Wheeler and they threw Nola. Arguably their two best starters. I would say definitely their two best starters. And we went with a guy who has Cy Young credentials and a guy who has Cy Young credentials. I'll say it right there. Yusei Kikuchi has been a thing of beauty.
Let's go.
Since the All-Star break, he has been an absolute. He's a whole different pitcher on the bump. I don't know what it is. The confidence is there. He's got his swagger. He only pitched 6 innings. Jesse, you said 86 pitches. That's still quite a bit for Yusei Kikuchi. I would like to see this guy go the 7, especially how well he was dealing, only giving up 4 base runners and striking out 7. Like he was locating his fastball perfectly. Probably some of the best I've seen you say locate the fastball, and working off that with the slider. Hey, it was really good because that Phillies team, man, you cannot sleep on the Philadelphia Phillies. You saw it in game 2. That anytime, their lineup can pop an extra base hit. Yusei Kikuchi was the 2-game series MVP. Sorry, not much to report on. But if you're going to talk about a guy who played the biggest factor in the win we got, it's got to be Kikuchi, man.
Riley, this was the guy I was talking about when we started our show a year and a half ago when I wanted the Blue Jays to get on board. This is the guy I was thinking the Toronto Blue Jays could get. Throws 96 plus from the left-hand side. He's got the hammer curveball, the hammer slider, good cutter and change piece to mix with it. This is the guy I was imagining. And that's why it hurt me so much last year when he was getting hit hard and giving up all those home runs. But I'm finally so glad we are able to see it from Yusei Kikuchi. Riley, I'm going to share some stats about what he's done. Not only does he have the best ERA since the All-Star break, which is what we mentioned last episode when we talked about Yusei Kikuchi, he has now gone 2 earned runs or fewer in 12 of his last 14 starts, which is ridiculous. And I think it's 1 earned run or fewer in his last 7, Riley. And you mentioned the no walks for Kikuchi. That is the big plus forward. His walk rate is now the lowest of his career. And if this is the guy that's coming forward for us, this is going to be a great step. In fact, he's even impressed our manager, John Schneider. He said, quote, he was throwing lightning bolts in those first few innings, Riley. And I was there at the Rogers Center on Tuesday to watch Yusei Kikuchi pitch. And I would agree. They had the dome closed for a reason. And it wasn't because of rain. It was because of the lightning bolts that Yusei Kikuchi was throwing down at Philadelphia Phillies hitters, Riley. So it was some of the best, if not the best, we've ever seen from the Cooch man himself. So, Riley, my question to you is, before we get into the game recaps and other stories that happened this series, if the playoffs start tomorrow, Yusei Kikuchi is starting a game for this team, correct?
Well, technically, if they start tomorrow, Gausman and Kikuchi need at least 1 day of rest.
Of course.
And,
way to be technical.
Yeah, well, let's go technicalities aside. Yusei Kikuchi, for me right now, is pitching in either game, like in the first 2 games.
Yeah, it's either him or Gausman, right?
I think you just named the two guys.
Yeah.
As far as the order goes, let's not forget what Kevin Gausman has done in the last part of his career, especially with the Blue Jays. Let's not forget that and know how good Kevin Gausman can be. It would be lineup depending. Again, it's about who's got rest and whatever else. But right now, you want to name guys over, like you want to name a guy over a Chris Bassett or over a Jose Barrios. It's probably Kikuchi right now. And I think if we said this 2 months ago, we'd be stoned to death for saying something like this.
I never quit on the guy, man. Never quit on the guy.
Hey, it's the reality we live in right now. That yes. Like, how long is this going to last? Well, Jesse, I don't really care. We're going to ride this out, whether this is for the next 5 days or for the next 5 years of how good he's been. And it's the same thing with the hitter. When a guy's good, you got to play him. Yusei Kikuchi has been one of the guttiest pitchers right now in attacking hitters. He's throwing competitive pitches all over the place, locating his pitches well. And, of course, a lefty with the velocity he has. He is hard to handle. He showed that against a very good Philadelphia Phillies lineup. Like, yeah, absolutely starting game 2 for me probably right now if the postseason starts tomorrow.
I'm with you, Riley. And I remember it wasn't so long ago that many Blue Jays fans wanted Yusei Kikuchi put to the bullpen when Hyun-Jin Ryu came back, and that is not happening anymore. Riley, and we talked about the home runs being an issue for Kikuchi. That is now 7 straight starts for Yusei Kikuchi without allowing a home run. Like, this guy is a completely new man right now. And remember in the offseason when we talked about Kikuchi and we were like, what is the plan for success for him? What is it going to look like? And we both brought up, well, Robbie Ray was here. He won a Cy Young Award with the Blue Jays in 2021. Like, that's what success is going to look like for Yusei Kikuchi. And our friend on Twitter, Chris Black, I've mentioned him before, took what Robbie Ray did in his 5 best starts with the Toronto Blue Jays versus what Yusei Kikuchi is doing here right now. And the pitch mix for the two look extraordinary the same. 51% pass ball, 45% breaker, 5% change. It's been roughly the same for each. And the location of those pitches was actually better for Yusei Kikuchi in this 5-start stretch than it was for Robbie Ray in his Cy Young Award season.Riley, I am buying the juice on Yusei Kikuchi.
Hey, and you got, like you said, if you really look at them and comparatively, Robbie Ray was a guy who has struggled with the walks throughout his career. It might be a hard throwing left-hander problem, but if you can get that to work, I mean, it's a recipe for destruction in a good way for our Toronto Blue Jays. If Yusei Kikuchi can keep this up through basically to end the year, like it's almost September. It's almost September, and we're now kind of drinking the juice on Yusei Kikuchi. And you want to talk about X factors? We always talk about X factors at the start of the year. Yusei Kikuchi is probably this team's biggest X factor right now, and it's been just not sheer dominance on the bump because he's not going 8 innings. But when he's in the ball game, Jesse, you feel a lot different than you did to start the season. I think, and the confidence goes with Yusei Kikuchi as well. I think he knows how good he's been, and I hope he continues to ride that out.
I think he will, Riley. Now, before we get into the other players here, let's get over the game recaps as we do for those of you who haven't been listening at home. But as we kind of mentioned, the Jays game won on Thursday. They won 2-1. Kikuchi was awesome, like we said. The Jays were down 1-0 when the Jays had 2 men on and nobody out. And then after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit into a double play, George Springer had a clutch RBI. The go-ahead run would later come in to score in the 8th inning thanks to a Cavan Biggio hit by pitch. Thank you for the big feet, Cavan Biggio. They came in handy in this game. He ended up reaching base 3 times. Whit Merrifield had 2 more hits, 2 hit Whit, did it again. And Brandon Belt reached base twice in this game too. And the bullpen was key in this one. 3 innings pitched, no hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, including 2 from Jordan Romano in his first game back and 3 in a row from Jordan Hicks. It was the Toronto Blue Jays' 27th comeback win of the season. And in game 2, in the final one, Kevin Gausman was not at his best. The Jays lose this game 9-4 against the Phillies. 7 hits, 5 runs, 3 of them earned, and 3 walks in 5 1/3 innings for Kevin Gausman. His 3 walks were the 3rd most he's allowed all in a start all year. earlier. And the Jays had a lead after 3 innings, though. Dalton Varsho had a clutch 2-run home run, and Cavan Biggio continued his hot streak with a 2-run single of his own, but the bats went cold after that. Jay Jackson and Bowden Francis pitched in relief. Both gave up solo home runs. So after the series, Riley, the Jays sit with a record of 67-55. We're 7.5 games back of Baltimore for the AL East, and we're 3 games behind Houston for the second wildcard spot. And after this weekend, Riley, we are only half a game up on the Seattle Mariners if they've just run through the Kansas City Royals with about 6 weeks or so to go, Riley. So I guess we can touch on the state of the team, or we can keep going into players that we thought impressed us this series. Where do you want to go?
I mean, hold that thought on state of the team, and let's just talk about the series for one guy who's, it seems like an unlikely hero, an unlikely way to end the game. The bases are loaded, and you walk or get hit by a pitch. I believe if you walk, it's an RBI. I'm going to guess if you get hit by the pitch with the bases loaded and that run scores, is it not an RBI as well? Either way, it doesn't really matter. Cavan Biggio is at the plate, and he's already walked twice in this game.
Yeah,
and I asked you what those pitches were like, and it doesn't matter. In my head, it's like, okay, yes, I would like to say and dig deep on, okay, where were those pitches? Because we're talking about Cavan Biggio on walks. This is something this was a juicy conversation back in 2018, talking about Cavan Biggio's plate discipline, almost all but forgotten, unless you're still really high on the guy as far as, what he can do and how he approaches his plate appearances. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. He takes 2 walks, and, a slider comes in on him. He gets hit in the foot, takes first base. He, they walk home a run. It's a crucial run. And then, he gets a timely hit in the second game of the series. Not to be in vain, he had a very good series. I mean, he was on base 5 times. That's in 2 games. That's good. Nothing to take too lightly. And it's Cavan Biggio. This is a player that has been very much under the spotlight. Of course, last year we acquired Whit Merrifield. There's Santiago Espinal still in the equation. And you kind of got to thinking, what of Cavan Biggio? And of course, we acquired DeYoung at the deadline. And there's this kid, I don't know if you've heard of him, had some pretty good games early on, Davis Schneider. So the question with Cavan became, what of Cavan Biggio? And now for me, it's like, that's, irrelevant now. He's playing well. You put him in the lineup. Pretty self-explanatory for me. We'll probably, if we don't touch on DeJohn and Espinal, they have not been great at the plate.
And we'll get to them later in this episode.
Witt's been playing left field. He's been doing just fine. And Biggio playing his array of positions has also been doing just fine. And I want Biggio in the lineup. I know that there was right-handers against him. I know that he has looked not so good against lefties. So maybe play it matchup wise, but for the 2-game series and what Cavan did, he gets an easy thumbs up for the position player. He made the win happen, and drove in a couple runs in game 2. That's nice to see. It's probably a huge confidence booster for Cavan, because God knows he needs it.
I know I've told this story on the podcast before about Cavan Biggio. It was probably in our early days, but he does have a .427 on base percentage since the All-Star break, Riley. That is second in the American League. Like, you are not taking Cavan Biggio out of the lineup right now, even against lefties. The fallout from that is, I guess, that means Davis Schneider is not going to play, because you're not taking Whit Merrifield out of this lineup, like you mentioned, and you're not taking Cavan Biggio out of this lineup. That means unless Davis Schneider can play third base, which I don't think he's played a lot of in the minors, and Matt Chapman's coming back anyway, like, I don't think there's room for Davis Schneider. So we'll talk about that as we go further. But I want to tell this Cavan Biggio story. And it's back in 2018 when he was a rookie. He was in New Hampshire, right? And we always talked about how his plate discipline was such a skill for him that he took a ball on the outside of the plate. And I think this was around the time they were trying like an automated strike zone. So it was like robots calling the zone. Cavan Biggio took a pitch on the outside. Umpire called it a strike because, well, the machine thought it was a strike. Cavan Biggio looked at him, turned to him, and was like, no, that's wrong. That was not a strike. And the umpire's like, well, this is like robots calling this thing. Like, of course it's a strike. It turns out Cavan Biggio was actually right, and the Blue Jays computer calibration system of the strike zone was actually wrong. That's how good Cavan Biggio's eye was from such a young age. So I know I've told that story before, but I wanted to share it again here. Riley, let's get into that middle infield logjam a little bit here as well. You've kind of touched on it already, but Santiago Espinal, Riley, did not look good in this series. He made a real bad error at third base, which led to, at the time, the tying run and the go-ahead run score. And if Gausman gets out of that inning, maybe his line looks better too. And the Blue Jays ultimately couldn't rally from that. Plus, he has 2 extra base hits this past month. And like, even if you aren't going to send him down for somebody else, Ernie Clement, who's been playing third base for the Buffalo Bisons, has a WRC plus of 140, hitting 349, 405, 555 with double-digit home runs and steals. That is an option. Paul DeJong, Riley, 3 for 44 with no walks and a 40% strikeout rate since his trade over to the Toronto Blue Jays. We have Bo Bichette, who is tearing up his rehab assignment right now. He's ready to go. He will be back. Matt Chapman should be back from his thumb injury anytime soon. I want to see Davis Schneider get more at-bats here, Riley. What are we going to do with both Santiago Espinal and Paul DeJong? Is their time as a Toronto Blue Jay, is it over?
Man, I think that, I feel bad for Paul DeJong. This is a guy who's been, maybe not a well-known shortstop for our, small American League East minds. But for, the National League Central, he was probably one of the best shortstops going for, 4 or 5 years. And he comes to Toronto, maybe not always, the most consistent with the bat, but he's all just but fallen out of the sky at the plate. And I feel bad for him because there isn't much we can do. Once Bo gets back, Paul DeJong's really irrelevant. And Espinal defensively at third didn't cut it. That's a play I would like to think that Matt Chapman makes.
Yeah, and we almost take Matt Chapman's defense for granted because he makes that play in his sleep, right?
And there was another play, hug the line. Maybe Matt Chapman doesn't get to that ball, but he gets a better reaction time than Espinal, who, I'm not going to say he looked lost out there. He's not a third baseman. He's a very guy. When he played short, I enjoyed watching him play short. He's a good middle infielder, but he's not a corner guy. And hey, I'll give an excuse me for your middle infield guys. They're not supposed to hit as well as maybe your third and first baseman. So when we're putting Espinal on third and compensating that for what his bat should be for a corner infielder, he's nowhere near the extra base power. I don't know about Schneider's defense either for third base, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. Either way, Jesse, the problem, the log jam right now is solved by getting Bo Bichette back and getting Matt Chapman back. Those are 2 all-star left side infielders who are going to work wonders for this team. Yes, maybe Matt Chapman does not have it with the bat this year.
Yeah, but he had better than Espinal.
He's better than Espinal, and defensively, he's almost second to none. And then Bo Bichette, a travesty. Probably not going to get to 200 hits this year because he was hurt. And of course, I probably jinxed it by saying that. He's one of the best hitters in the league at getting bat off ball. Unfortunate that way, but we need Bo Bichette in the lineup because, he can, with runners on base, with runners not on base, Bo Bichette has been the guy. He's been this team's MVP this year, and he needs to come back. And, that will cut the 0 for 4s for Espinal. That'll cut the 0 for 3 for 37 Paul DeJong with 40% strikeout rates. Those are inexcusable numbers, Jesse. And we can't, where we are in the standings, we can't have that.
Yes, exactly.
If we expect to advance, look, we're not trying to stay the same, Jesse. There are teams sneaking right up on us right now. We need to improve our record, not just remain 500 for the rest of this year, because we don't know what's going to happen, man. We need to build up some wins.
Look, the Blue Jays have always been good at asset management. They don't want to trade for Paul DeJong and just chuck him off and DFA him like a month later. They're stubborn. Like, I'm kind of stubborn. So they're not going to do that. I think Espinal has 2 minor league options available. I think it's very well likely that he will be going down to Buffalo, getting some time there, and the Blue Jays roll with everybody else. I do think, too, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's winning time now, right? We can't afford. I want to thank Santiago Espinal for the work he did in the first half of 2021. The Blue Jays are not making that playoff push that year without him. He got to the All-Star game. That is fantastic, but that is not the player he is anymore, and I do think his time with the team is coming to an end here, unfortunately. Riley, I wanted to talk about the bullpen. Or do you have a thought on Kevin Gausman start here before we move on to the bullpen?
Just real quick. We know that he's got better. And honestly, Jesse, The control wasn't great. He got hit fairly hard. But the Phillies are a good team. Let's not say that it was all Gausman not pitching great. Just a bad combination of he didn't have his best day and the Phillies bats were hot, that's going to happen, man. If it weren't for like the Atlanta Braves are the best team in baseball, and I would say that the Phillies might have a better record or stand at the top of a division if it's not for the Atlanta Braves. So, I mean, hey, I'm going to hold Kevin Gausman to it. He'll come back and, his next few starts are going to probably look a lot better than this one in the second game.
I am buying the dip. I'm still in on the Kevin Gausman Cy Young train. Just a little unlucky. He did complain about the ump. I know we are an umpire-friendly show over here, but sometimes it's frustrating when you aren't getting those strike calls like Kevin Gausman should have gotten in this game. Dalton Varsho had a 2-run home run, Riley. He looked pretty good. He's played good center field, just as we expected. He's attacking the fastball more, so just store that in the mental break. When you are watching this upcoming series against Cincinnati, watch how Dalton Varsho attacks the fastball. I think some good things are coming there. And I want to do some bullpen thoughts, Riley, because Jordan Romano came back. He immediately got the save, 3 up, 3 down, 2 strikeouts, his 29th of the season, his 90th of his career for Jordan Romano. And now that he's been back, we've mentioned Jay Jackson now has given up solo home runs in 2 of his last 3 appearances. I wanted to get a thought on the bullpen and where do you rank these guys? Because the Blue Jays still, as good as their bullpen has been, they have a lot of names for not so many spots. So if we are rostering 7 or 8 guys and September call-ups are still about 2 weeks away, right? Who's the odd man out here? Jordan Romano, Jordan Hicks, Eric Swanson, Tim Meza, Jimmy Garcia, Genesis Cabrera, Nate Pearson. Trevor Richards will be back soon. He's on a rehab assignment in Buffalo. Chad Green is also on his rehab assignment in Buffalo, and Bowden Francis. So out of those guys, I guess, rank them?
So we're going to go, obviously, who's going to close games. We saw it. He came back. Fans loved it, Jesse. I'm sure you were screaming on your feet when he entered that. By the way, Jesse, I don't think I need to tell you, but that's another 1-run save for Jordan Romano.
Yes, and he's had a ton of those this
He's
year.
had a ton of those. Romano's the guy in the 9th. If you want to talk about your traditional 8th inning setup, man, we're going to go with Jordan Hicks right now.
I think so. He looked dominant in this series. 3 up, 3 down, 3 strikeouts.
And then for the next 3 guys as far as leverage, and I would say no particular order, but there is a particular order. I'm going to go first. I'm going to go Garcia. Second, I'm going to go Tim Meza.
Yep.
Third, I'm going to go Swanson.
So Swanson's moved down to 5th in your pen there?
Yeah. Hey, and I'm fine with that. And I'm going to throw in the next guy after Swanson's going to be Cabrera. That's 6 guys right there. And Jesse, Jay Jackson for a while looked unbeatable. I'm gonna say that 2 home runs in 2 relief appearances isn't the end of the world, but this is a hard Blue Jays bullpen to crack. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna want to see Chad Green pitch. Chad Green is a weapon, and he will fit so nicely. We have gone from having, I would say, the Jays, besides getting Romano, we have never had a ton of hard throwers in our bullpen, Jesse. And now we have Romano, who came up with us. We traded for Jordan Hicks, and in a short time, we'll have Chad Green. I don't know if he'll get the 90 stuff, but he certainly throws around your 95, 96. That'll be just nice with a 2-seamer that's also almost just as fast as a 4-seam in velocity. So I really want to see him. 2 lefties there. Hey, if I'm going over, I might have to slot Richards back. That leaves.
He's got to be here.
That's gonna leave a guy like Francis out for now. That's gonna leave a guy like Nate Pearson out, and possibly Jay Jackson too. And hey, you know what? Pearson's done fantastic, but I'm gonna go based off of previous track records. And if Chad Green doesn't have it, Jesse, then there's not a spot for him right now.
Yeah, but you got to see what you have in him, right? Like you have to.
You have to see what you have in him. He was a guy who was closing games for the New York Yankees. That says something about a major league pitcher. If you've closed games for the Yankees, you've been a somebody in this league at one point or another. Chad Green might be more relevant now, but let's see if we can bring his relevance back and putting him in an already, I won't say lethal, but a very competitive Blue Jays bullpen that Chad Green could have a huge impact to as well, with a guy with the addition of Genesis Cabrera, with the addition of Jordan Hicks, and with Jordan Romano back from injury. We've really improved on our bullpen. I think we're going to get a lot better towards the end of this season.
Yeah, it's a numbers game, like you said, and it's a good problem to have too many good pitchers for not enough spots, Riley. Chad Green pitched for the Yankees for 7 years. He has still yet to allow an earned run at Rogers Center, and that is still absolutely bonkers to me as a stat. As much as I want to see Nate Pearson, as much as I think throwing 101 out of that bullpen could be a weapon for him in the playoffs, I think you're right. He's just getting caught up in the numbers, but we'll see how things go. One injury away can change all of this, but good problem to have with the Blue Jays bullpen that has too many good arms for not enough spots. Riley, down on the farm, Ricky Tiedemann is back. He's joined the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. He had a first start since his rehab assignment was over today. His day is done. He went 3 2/3 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. I do think he did pitch better, though, than his final line would suggest. He left the game with runners on first and second, and 2 out, was pulled, and then the reliever came in and allowed both runs to score. I'd wager Ricky Tiedemann is so good he probably would have got out of that. I think our time is done with his injury, that we'll see him on the team this season, but he's going to be the talk of spring training next year, just like he was the talk of spring training this year. And I'm excited to see what the Blue Jays have in their number 1 pitching prospect.
We have gone from talking about a lot of veteran relief pitchers, and there's Jesse, when you talk about pitchers, there's always a question mark. Young guys are so fun to dream on and bank on. And can Ricky Tiedemann be the guy? We've had a guy like Yusei Kikuchi, a veteran international signing, who we traded for from the Mariners. He's really stepped up this year. We have our basically resurrection of Roy Halladay, in a sense, with Alek Manoah, who has floundered this year. Pitching has been really strange this year. I think if that injury does not happen to Ricky Tiedemann, we could be talking about some different layouts in September. And I'm not going to push it and say that, oh yeah, he's going to be here, because we don't know that, Jesse. But and we can't just forget about it. I mean, but the likelihood is he's going to be spring training ready, and he has a real chance to make the roster. And you just hope, and I'm not saying if he makes the roster that something has gone wrong, but Jesse, the pitchers that we already have, you would like them to already make the roster, because it means they have been pitching well. And hey, and I like to see a young guy come up too, because we have not had too many. I mean, guys like Dave Stieb, Roy Halladay, they're diamonds in the rough for our franchise. So anytime we have our own drafted pitcher that stays and does well, we love things. I personally love things like that. I would love to see him make the roster out of camp. But yeah, just if he, he had a lackluster start, whatever. He's a 20-year-old kid. He's going to improve. The sky's the ceiling for him. Can't wait to see him with the big league club one day.
Yeah. Also, if you were listening to this episode on Friday, it is Ricky Tiedemann's 21st birthday. So happy birthday to Ricky Tiedemann. Before we get out of here today, I do want to say this is episode 127, and we've been doing some fun numbers with the numbers 127, and there are some good ones for this episode here. That is the number of doubles that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has in his career. It is also the number of double plays that now person in the level of excellence, Jose Bautista, grounded into with his time with the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's exactly how many starts that J Happ and Ricky Romero both made for the Toronto Blue Jays. So 127 is that number. 127 in hitter war for the Blue Jays.
Oh, let me guess, Jesse. You tell me a decade and you tell me a position, because I've been thinking about this all day. You give me a decade, you give me a position.
A decade in a position?
Yeah, for this hitter. Okay. For the hitter war.
Okay, I'm into this. So 127 in hitter war. This person was an outfielder / DH. He played in the mid-2010s for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Oh, wow. Mid-2010s outfielder / DH.
I think he DH'd more than played outfield, but I will look that up.
Okay, so it's escaping me right now. Wow.
He was on the playoff teams, though, the 2015 playoff team for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Oh, I'm blanking hard right now. He wasn't a first baseman. It's not a Chris Colabella.
Well,
We
yeah,
already did him.
We did him, but because this list kind of fluctuates a little bit, that one does change. So yes, Chris Colabello is the answer for this one. Here. This next
bravo.
one, pitcher war, Riley, is going to be tougher. 127 in Blue Jays pitching war. He only threw 68 innings with the team in 1990. So good luck.
Oh, the old Foghorn Anderson. I don't know.
Shot in the dark. I did not know who this player was. His name is Willie Blair, who threw 68 innings for the Toronto Blue Jays
Not a
in
chance.
1990. He started 6 games. He was in the bullpen. He was kind of a swingman for the Toronto Blue Jays in 1990. So if you're a Blue Jays fan of that decade, so leave something in the comments about Willie Blair if you have a good memory of him and his time with Toronto.
Yeah, well, I had no idea. Colabello, though, yep, definitely. And the steroids for the guy, too, got suspended and never made a resurgence for the league. So that's too bad. But hey, that's what happens. Don't do steroids unless it saves the game of baseball once upon a time. And then we approve it, Jesse. And then we approve it.
So is that the official Buds and Blue Jays stance? Don't do drugs unless they make you so much better.
No. If they help ratings,
Sure.
I think that's what the league was going for, man. And hey, one of my favorite stats, Sammy Sosa hits 3 years with 60 or more home runs. And I've always, I don't think I've ever said this, and this is way off topic, but I just want it to be known publicly that if you convert that to, let's say, take away 10 home runs, that's 3 years in a row, or 3 years and 3 and 4 years where he has 50 plus. I think personally, and ridicule the hell out of me if you disagree with it, I think Sammy Sosa is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just gonna put it out there, and I know that's an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, it's just I care about what you did on the field. We've had the Hall of Fame debate. We'll have it again this offseason, but yes, I agree he should be in the Hall.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Scott Rowland got in, so that's for me. It's been a good year.
That'll do it for episode here today, guys. Thank you everybody for tuning in. The Blue Jays are heading into the state of Ohio and are beginning a 3-game series with the Cincinnati Reds. Riley, the last time the Blue Jays were there was 2014, and I think Munenori Kawasaki was batting leadoff for the Toronto Blue Jays at that time. So it's been a long time since we visited Great American Small Park, as I like to call it. The Reds, good team. The Blue Jays are going to have to play well. We are getting healthy. Let's say get in there. Let's win this series, and let's get on a run because Seattle is hot on our back. Is there anything you want to add about that series or anything else before we call our episode here today?
I think I saw you retweet something on the Buds account there for the lineup, and I think I had a rare Juan Francisco sighting.
Yeah, third base hitting
lineup.
7. Yes, sir.
Yep. Hey, that's a name there. Colby Rasmus, of course, was in that lineup. Not one of our better teams, but all the same, Jesse, there is probably no active MLB player on that team right now. I can't imagine. So
Blue Jays, you would be correct. Yes.
I'm sure I would be. But hey, it's a different time 9 years ago was for this franchise. And look at all the young talent we have, man. Hey, you know what? Playing a team we don't always play against in Cincinnati. And I think the Great American Ballpark, or whatever you want to call it, I think Cincinnati, I think the NL Central has really nice baseball parks. You were at Wrigley this year, PNC, or sorry, you're at PNC.
Yeah.
You're at PNC. Wrigley's beautiful. Cincinnati's got a good park, and Busch Stadium, I think, is probably. I've done a lot of listening to MLB player interviews. I think they say Busch Stadium's their favorite. So going to a nice ballpark, Jesse, can't beat that. Hopefully we walk out of there with some wins.
And it would be nicer with a sweep of the Reds is all I ask for. We'll be back on Sunday night to recap the series. Until then, guys, let's go Blue Jays.
Thanks, guys.